Super. Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Thanks, Amanda. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Halton Environmental Network and Small Change Fund, welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Lisa Kohler. I'm the Executive Director at the Halton Environmental Network. Thank you for attending this webinar to learn more about a project that HEN and the Small Change Fund are exploring. Today's session is meant to provide an opportunity to share some information with you and encourage you. After the session, we hope you can complete the survey. I'm really happy that you're here. A few reminders for our call this evening. Cameras will be off and your microphone will be muted. Questions are welcome at any time. Please share them with the panelists via the chat box. We can help you troubleshoot any technical challenge. So again, use that chat box and let us know. In addition, this evening's webinar, we are using closed captioning. So if you do require closed captioning, please look at the live transcript button on the bottom of your call, and you can click on it, and the closed captioning will pop up at the bottom of your screen. Tonight's webinar is all about exploring ways to make homes in Oakville greener by increasing the uptake of permeable service and electric vehicles. I'd like to gratefully acknowledge the funding provided by the Oakville Community Foundation via the Federal Investment Readiness Program. And I'd also like to thank you for your time this evening. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the uncovering of yet another terrible tragedy that was inflicted upon Indigenous communities in Canada. On behalf of all of HEN's staff, volunteers, and board, we send our heartfelt support to everyone impacted, and we remember the children lost at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia. I would also like to acknowledge that HEN resides on Treaty 22 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We honor this relationship and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for their work and care of Mother Earth and Turtle Island. I'm pleased to be joined this evening by Franz Hartmann of the Small Change Fund, our collaborator on this project. Franz will be sharing some information about the Small Change Fund and also some background on this study. Amanda Kennedy, an independent certified professional facilitator, is with us today to moderate the session. I will now pass it over to Amanda.
Thanks, Lisa, for the warm welcome, and hi, everyone. I would welcome you to introduce yourselves via the chat. If you are interested, you're welcome to share your name, your organization, and your role. We would love to know who's here. And I know that tonight is being recorded, but this portion in the chat box will be shared with others beyond the recording tonight. So welcome, everyone. We're so happy to see you here. I like to start every session with the why. So why are we here? Why aren't you, sitting on your front porch having a nice beverage? Why are you with us right now? And so I want to come back to the objectives. And really, I think Lisa mentioned these right off the top. The intent of tonight is to share some information about a feasibility study that the Halton Environmental Network is undertaking alongside the Small Change Fund, and to direct you to a community survey to gather your ideas. And I would say there's also a third objective. And we had a webinar earlier today, and we also received a lot of great questions and a lot of great ideas. So maybe there's things that you're not seeing on the screen today, or maybe there's things that you haven't heard that you have questions about that you're saying, as you go through that study, maybe consider this. And so I'm going to add that as a third objective, and we would love to hear more about your questions that emerge as we go through the presentation tonight. And so what is your important role? I think I touched on it already, but we are asking something of you tonight. So we're going to share some information, and I'd ask that you listen, reflect, and question that information and share those questions with us. And as Lisa has mentioned, you're welcome to share those ideas and questions anytime via the chat box. And our main ask for tonight is that you take some time to complete a survey after this webinar. So we're going to circulate the link, and we'd ask that you complete that, you share that with your colleagues, and share that with your friends. And we'll touch a little bit more upon that in a moment. And of course, spread the word. And I think the last thing that wasn't on this slide that I would also say about tonight is feel free to follow up with your ideas. So if there's things that you think about beyond this webinar, we'll put up the email address for the Halton Environmental Network at the end, and always feel free to keep the conversation going. You know, this is part of a conversation. It's not really just one point in time. So feel free to follow up with your ideas. And in terms of following along with your ideas, I'm going to monitor the chat box throughout the rest of the session. And I'll take those questions and moderate a question and answer session at the end with Lisa and Franz. And Lisa, I'm going to pass it back to you just to share a little bit more about HEN.
Thank you, Amanda. The Halton Environmental Network is a not-for-profit organization focused on supporting and enhancing the capacity for local climate action. HEN strives to educate, engage, partner, and act for the community of Halton. Next slide, Amanda. We run numerous successful programs for our community and bring relevant parties to drive and facilitate communication, cooperation, resources, and alignment with the best practices and policies for climate mitigation and adaptation. If you'd like any more information about HEN, please feel free to follow us on our social media or check out our website. Without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Franz, and Franz, take it away.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My name is Franz Hartman. I'm with the Small Change Fund. The Small Change Fund was actually Canada's first crowdsourcing environmental charity, and our mission, as the slide said, is to help communities reach their full potential by working with communities across Canada to promote sustainable activities. We're also part of a network called Unflood Ontario that's actually led by community foundations, including the Oakville Community Foundation. And Unflood Ontario promotes natural infrastructure as a way to reduce the harm caused by flooding. Next slide, please. Now, what is Green Drive Oakville? Well, I'm going to answer that by answering where, what, why, and how. Green Drive Oakville, not surprisingly, focuses on Oakville. And we're able to do this because we are generously funded by the Oakville Community Foundation via the Federal Investment Readiness Program. So thanks again to the Oakville Community Foundation for that. Next slide, please. So what is Green Drive Oakville doing? We are exploring the possibility of creating a local social purpose enterprise that hires people on to install permeable driveways and electric vehicle chargers in people's homes. Put simply, we're exploring the feasibility of creating a new business where people, where the staff of that business come and green your home's transportation infrastructure. Next slide, please. Now, what is a permeable driveway? Most of you probably have seen or have a driveway like you see in picture one at the top left of the screen. It's made of asphalt or it's made of concrete. These driveways, when it rains, all the water flows right down the driveway onto the road and into the storm sewer system. Permeable driveways are permeable. They let water soak into the ground below the driveway. You have three different types, at least three different types of permeable driveways. One has gravel infill, the other has grass infill, and the other is made up of permeable pavers. So all the spaces in between the stones lets water soak in. This is really important because it lets water soak in, which means less strain is put on the city stormwater system, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Next slide, please. So what is an electric vehicle charger? You've probably seen these out in the community. I know that some of these exist in Oakville, and I know they exist in communities around Oakville. You're definitely going to see more of these in homes across Oakville, Ontario, and in Canada. And hopefully they will be charging EVs that are built at the Oakville plant. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? Well, I don't think it'll come to a surprise to anyone here that we're in a climate crisis, and we need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and we need to make our homes and communities more resilient. Green Drive Oakville is one possible way we can individually and collectively take action and build on Hen's work to help communities take local control. Next slide, please. So why else are we doing this? Like any good idea, Green Drive Oakville could have multiple benefits. Could it, for example, create local jobs, especially for youth at risk? Could it help Oakville residents reduce the harm caused by flooding? Could it reduce our carbon footprint? Could it be profitable? And could it contribute to building local awareness around stormwater management and flood prevention? Let me spend a couple of minutes just talking about that last question for a moment. Oakville, like many communities across Ontario, has a flooding problem. And as the climate crisis gets worse, there will be more severe rainstorms. And the stormwater systems in towns like Oakville will overflow more regularly, and that's going to lead to more urban flooding. And one way to reduce flooding is to reduce the amount of water we send into the stormwater system. So permeable driveways, for example, may actually also help your neighbors by putting less strain on Oakville's stormwater system. Our study will help us find the answers to these 5 questions, and we hope that the answer is going to be yes. Next slide, please. Now let's move to the how. You and other Oakville residents are key to figuring out the how. And to get us there, we're looking to the community for your thoughts on what matters to you. Your ideas are going to help us inform the how. That's why we've created a short survey that Amanda's going to tell you a bit about shortly, that we hope you will complete right after the webinar. So thank you ahead of time for completing the survey, because we are grateful for your time and expertise. Next slide, please. So we're also doing more than surveys. We've been conducting background research on existing and potential market for permeable driveways and for EV chargers, and for offering these services. We're looking at other players who are in this sector, what they're doing, and we're looking at the finances of this potential business to figure out, what are the conditions required to make money. Um, as I said, we're also completing one-on-one surveys with people, and then we're going to be modeling stuff. And then we're going to take all of that, we're going to take the results from the community service, these studies that we've done, and we're going to create a feasibility study that outlines under what conditions Green Drive Oakville will succeed. And we're going to share our results with the community. And our hope is that all of this work is going to be done by end of July. So thank you. And now I want to turn it back to Amanda.
Thanks, Ron, for that really clear overview. I appreciate it. So you remember I said at the beginning of tonight's session that there was an ask? This is it. We'd ask that after this webinar, you complete a quick survey and share it with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. And Lisa, so much. I noticed that you put the link for the survey right in the chat box, so thanks so much. The survey is really meant to capture the pulse of the community when it comes to the 2 concepts that Franz has outlined. And so I just want to walk a little bit through the survey with you. I'm not going to walk through it with you because it's so quick. We know that you'll be able to go there and answer the questions, but we expect that it won't take more than 10 minutes. We've done some testing and it's been between 5 and 10 minutes. And really it asks what you consider to be important about electric vehicles and greening the outside of your home. And we've tried as much as possible to make it multiple choice and not open-ended, so it should be fairly quick. And I want to note that the survey is open to everyone. So if you have friends and family that don't live in Oakville, that's fine. The very first question that we ask is around the postal code. So we're able to sort responses that are just by Oakville residents for this study, but of course, other responses are absolutely welcome. We just included a few screenshots here just so you can see the types of questions that we're asking. So if you remember, I said it was multiple choice. So here, you can see a question, if you don't own an electric vehicle, are you considering one? So yes, no, or not sure. And here's again, I think Franz, you showed this image earlier. So we've tried to include some imagery. And then, for example, in this question, we are asking you to rate the visual appeal of some of that imagery. So we try to get at different aspects of the concepts that are being explored through this study. That is really it in terms of our presentation. We've tried to keep the presentation portion short tonight, and we are happy to take any questions, understanding that, we're conducting a study. So any questions that you share, we might not have the answer tonight, and that's absolutely okay, because we'd love to hear your questions so that we can do the research and we can include responses in the survey and in future information that might come back to the community. So I'm going to pause here and just see if any questions have come up in the chat, or if Lisa or Franz, if there's anything else that you had wanted to mention that maybe you didn't during your slides.
Thanks, Amanda. While you're reviewing the question, I think I'll just address one question that came up at the last webinar that we did. That was around the fit of having permeable surfaces here in Oakville with our harsh winters, et cetera. And how durable are they, and how do they really function? And one thing that we did bring up was that the town of Oakville actually has an excellent installation of permeable surface at their North Wark location. So that's just up Niagawa Road, just past Dundas Street is North Works. And you can actually see a very large permeable surface in action. So it's great. They have no issues there, and it functions very well in our climate with no issues whatsoever. So if anyone is riding their bike or going for a walk up Niagawa, I'd urge you to take a peek at that installation.
Thanks, Lisa. And I'm just monitoring the chat box, and a question came in, and it says, I'll just read it out for everyone. It says, I'm renovating on a budget. Is going green on my driveway significantly more costly?
Yeah.
Franz, do you want to chime in?
I'll take a first jab at that. So we have done a bit of research, preliminary research into the costs, and it's clear that the cost of replacing an existing asphalt driveway, the full surface of that driveway with the permeable driveway is likely going to be more expensive. I can't say it's going to be 1.5 times or 2 times or 3 times, because it really depends on a number of factors, what sort of material you want to use, etc. So we know that that is going to be an issue. And that's why we're actually looking at ways in which there may be rebate programs. For example, the town of Oakville, I know, is looking at moving towards a stormwater charge system. As some of you may or may not know, stormwater services are paid for in most municipalities out of your water bill. So you get a water bill every year or every few months, and that water bill is actually tied to the amount of water that you use, the water that comes out of your tap. And in most municipalities, that's it. It's about water. So if you live in a household, for example, where you use very little water, but you have a lot of hard surfaces, so you send a lot of rain into the stormwater system, you're not paying a lot for that stormwater system because your water bill is so low. But if you live in a household where you actually you use a lot of water, but you have rain gardens and a permeable driveway and a green roof, in other words, you send very little water into the stormwater system, you're actually paying more for the stormwater system. So there's not a proper connection there between the amount of rainwater you put into the stormwater system and how much you pay for it. And that's why a lot of municipalities are actually now looking at having a stormwater charge, which is separate from a water charge. And that stormwater charge is tied to how much water your property puts into the stormwater system. And I know that Oakville is looking into that. I know many municipalities in Ontario, or some of them have already come up with a stormwater charge. And many of those municipalities also have a rebate program, so that if you install permeable surfaces like a green driveway, or if you put in a rain garden, you will get money. It will reduce their stormwater charge. So bottom line is, right now the cost is going to be greater, but we're looking to see if there are ways of reducing that cost. One final comment I'll make, and this comes from a conversation I have with an old high school friend who lives in Waterloo, my hometown, and we were chatting about this, and I mentioned this, and he also said, yeah, I think it's going to cost more. And then I asked him, so how much of your driveway, your driveway that's in front of your 2-car garage, how much of that driveway do you actually use for your car? And he goes, well, I'm almost always the only person who's parking in that driveway. and I always park in the same place. So I said, well, why don't you put up 2 lanes of permeable pavers where your wheels go and leave the rest and let it turn into grass? And he goes, that would be a great idea. Now that doesn't work for everyone, but the reason I bring that up is that um, think not just about replacing your existing driveway with permeable pavers. Think about how much of that driveway do you actually need for a car. And if you don't need it all, maybe you can repurpose some of that land for something else.
Lots of ideas bundled up there, Fran. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I see another question that's come in, and it came in via the Q&A, and I'm going to read it out. And then Lisa, I might pass it to you just to respond on this one. So it says, the soil of Northeast Oakville is hard red clay. How well will how well will water permeate into such a base?
Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Linda, for that great question. I am an Oakville resident, and I actually live on red clay, so I really did like that question. So thanks, Linda. I think looking at the NorthWorks facility location is great because, again, that is on very dense red clay that we're known for here in Oakville, that's for sure. And they have no issues with pooling on that facility. It does seem to permeate quite well. So there is other installations throughout Oakville that would be on that same dense soil. And as long as the driveway is installed properly, we're seeing no issues when we chat with those homeowners or other locations that have permeable driveways. So the great news is we can do it even on our red clay, Linda. So thanks for the question.
Super. Great. Well, are there any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function and we can see them on this end. Great, I see another question that just came in via the Q&A and I'll read it out. It says, will the driveway lift in the winter when it's wet? So I don't know if we have an answer to that or if that's something that maybe we'll be investigating through the study.
I think both, but I know that Lisa has spent quite a bit of time looking at green driveways and permeable surfaces in Oakville. So what have you witnessed, Lisa?
Thanks, Bronze. Thanks, Linda, for those great questions. Again, I haven't heard of any driveways lifting, but I think we should investigate that a little bit more in our survey just to ensure that we do have the best data possible. So thanks for that question. I think we will explore that more. I do appreciate that. As well as shoveling snow over the surfaces. I saw that question too. And that is a great question. So depending on the type of permeable surface, some of them are raised a little bit more and the gravel is just a little bit lower. So it is actually quite easy to remove the snow. Believe it or not, where my family cottage is, which is on Georgian Bay, there is 2 permeable driveways up there and there's a lot of snow there. And I was really curious how they would be coping. So I asked for some pictures this winter. And again, there seemed to be no issue with removing the snow, whether that was a vehicle removing the snow, a snow blower, or a shovel. So again, I think we will take note of these and we will do some more exploring to ensure that we get the best data out there for the survey. But so far, so good, I think is what we're hearing. But thanks for those great questions, Linda. They're definitely things that we want to make sure that we're getting the best information out there for our survey. So thank you.
I will also add that I have been in contact with people who are experts on permeable driveways based out of the US it's not Minnesota, sorry, I'm forgetting the state just north of Chicago. And I've spent quite a bit of time traveling in Europe over the years. And I know that there are a lot of permeable driveways that exist in countries and in climates very, very similar to Southern Ontario's. And I suspect and this is something we're going to have to confirm through our research. I suspect it comes down to how is it installed, and if it's installed properly and if it's maintained properly, then the likelihood of there being any problems coming from snow or lifting due to winter are no worse than with asphalt and concrete.
Sure. Well, that's helpful. Thank you. And thanks everybody for your questions. I'm going to move us into our wrap up. And as by way of wrap up, I just want to recap the objectives. So why did we get together? Well, really, it was to share some information about a feasibility study that the Halton Environmental Network is undertaking alongside the Small Change Fund, and to direct you to a community survey to gather your ideas, and finally, really to hear your ideas and to hear your questions so that we can embed some of those into the study. So thanks, Lisa, for dropping the survey link back into the chat. Feel free to start the survey. And I think from my perspective, that's really the request, is to complete the survey. And I want to say thank you to everyone for being with us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. We appreciate your questions. And feel free to follow up anytime. The email address is there. It's info@haltonenvironment.ca. And just a reminder that today's session has been recorded, and one of these sessions, either tonight's or this afternoon's, will be up on HEN's YouTube channel in the coming days. And if you know others that are interested, feel free to direct them to the survey and or the video recording. I'm going to pass it over to you, Lisa, to say thanks and farewell.
Great, thanks, Amanda. And I just noticed Jackie's question really quick. And Jackie, I do believe that the charging stations are on the town's website, but I'm going to look into that. If you want to pop in your email to me, I'll get back to you before the end of this evening. Make sure I answer that question for you. Again, I just want to thank everyone for spending, your evening with us. We've appreciated your time and your questions and your attention. Please feel free to follow up with HEN at any time. We are here to support you in local climate action. As Amanda mentioned, this session has been recorded and it will be up on our YouTube channel in the coming days. We'll also be sharing it via our social media channels. If you know anyone else that may be interested or in hosting another session or getting more information about the survey, again, please just feel free to email us and we'd be happy to get in touch. So again, the survey's in the chat box. Thank you so very much. Thanks to the Oakville Community Foundation and the Investment Readiness Program. And of course, my colleagues, Franz Hartman and Amanda Kennedy. Thanks everyone. Have a lovely night and take care.
Thanks everybody. Good night.